Why is my mum's picture on your wall? The girl asks and the rich man freezes. Richard Anderson was making his monthly routine visit to St. Vincent's Home, the orphanage he had been funding for 3 years. As always, he had walked through the hallways greeting the nuns and checking on the renovations he sponsored. But today something would be different. It was when a little girl in a yellow dress came running down the hallway and stopped right in front of the businessman. Her small brown eyes sparkled with curiosity as she held a little red wicker basket. "Mister, why is my mum's picture on your wall?" asked the child, pointing directly toward Richard's private office. The man felt his blood run cold in his veins. Slowly, he turned to look in the direction the girl was pointing. There was the portrait of Helen, his late wife, painted 15 years earlier by a renowned artist from New York. "What do you mean, little one?" Richard managed to ask, his voice coming out hoarser than he intended. "That woman in the painting, she's my mum. She always drew this same necklace for me before bedtime," said the girl, without taking her eyes off the portrait. Sister Margaret, the orphanage director, appeared hurriedly in the hallway looking for the child. "Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Richard. Emily ran off from snack time again. Come, dear, leave the gentleman alone." But Richard couldn't move. He looked at the girl, then at the painting, then at the girl again. The resemblance was disturbing. The same almond-shaped eyes, the shape of her face, even the way she tilted her head when curious. "Wait," he said, placing a hand on Sister Margaret's shoulder. "Let her speak. How do you know she's your mother, Emily?" The girl opened the little red basket and took out some crumpled papers. They were drawings made with crayons, all showing the same blonde woman with a blue stone necklace around her neck. She always came to visit me before bedtime. She said that one day she would come get me, but then she stopped coming. Aunt Carol said she had to travel very far away. Richard felt his legs go weak. He knew that necklace perfectly. He had personally bought the sapphires in Switzerland for his 5th wedding anniversary with Helen. "Sister Margaret," he said, trying to keep his voice steady, "we need to talk. Now." In the following 15 minutes, in the director's office, Richard discovered information that shook everything he believed about his life. Emily had arrived at the orphanage 3 years ago, brought by neighbors from the Chinatown district. Her guardians had disappeared without a trace, leaving only a sealed letter with instructions to be opened when the girl turned 18. "She always talks about this mother who visited her," explained Sister Margaret. "We thought it was just an orphan child's imagination, you know how it is. But now, seeing this resemblance to your wife..." Richard could barely process the information. Helen had lost a pregnancy in the 7th month, 5 years before her passing. The doctor said she could never get pregnant again due to complications. But what if... "Can I see the letter?" he asked. "Unfortunately not, Mr. Richard. The instructions are very clear. Only when she turns 18. That same afternoon, Richard cancelled all his appointments and went straight home. His mansion in the Upper East Side had always been too quiet since Helen's departure, but today the silence seemed deafening. He found Mrs. Wilson, his longtime housekeeper, tidying the library. The 60-year-old woman had worked for the family for over 20 years and knew every corner of that house. "Mrs. Wilson, I need to ask you a very important question," said Richard, sitting in the leather armchair. "Do you remember Helen visiting the Chinatown district in the last years before she passed away?" The housekeeper stopped tidying the books and looked at him with a strange expression. "Why are you asking that?" "Just answer, please." Mrs. Wilson sighed deeply and sat down in the chair opposite. "Mrs. Helen went out a lot in the last few months. She said she was going to the salon, but she always came back with the same hairstyle. She said she was going shopping, but she never brought any bags. I thought it was odd, but it wasn't my place to question." Richard felt his heart race. "Do you know where she was going?" "I followed her once, Mr. Richard. Forgive the intrusion, but I was worried. She would take the car and go to the central area, near the Canal Street station. She parked on a small street and disappeared into a simple house for a few hours. The pieces were starting to come together in a frightening way. Why didn't you ever tell me? Because the next day I asked her about it, and she cried so much. She said she couldn't explain, but that one day I would understand. She asked me never to tell you, and I kept my word until today." Richard spent the entire night awake, rummaging through every drawer, every document, every photo in the house. In the attic, he found a box he had never seen before hidden behind the Christmas decorations. Inside, there were receipts for monthly bank transfers to an account in the name of Carol Thomas, all signed by Helen. The next morning, Richard returned to the orphanage earlier than usual. Emily was in the courtyard playing with other children, but when she saw him, she came running toward him. "You're back," she said, smiling. "Are you going to take me to see my mom?" "Emily," Richard knelt to be at the girl's level, "tell me more about this mother of yours. What was she like?" "She was beautiful and smelled nice. She always wore a blue dress when she came to see me, and she sang a song to help me sleep." "How did it go again?" The girl closed her eyes, concentrating. "Sleep, my angel, for Mommy is here. Sleep peacefully, for I will protect you." Richard felt a shiver run down his spine. It was exactly the song that Helen used to hum when she thought he wasn't listening. The same melody she said she had learned from her grandmother. "Emily, do you remember the name of the aunt who took care of you?" "Aunt Carol. She was really nice. She made carrot cake just like my mom's. But one day she got very scared of an ugly man who was banging on the door. Then she took me to the neighbors and said she was going to get my mom. But she never came back." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like the video and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now, continuing. Richard needed to find Carol Thomas. He spent the following days investigating, hired a private detective, and discovered that the woman had been found lifeless 3 years ago in Pennsylvania, a victim of a car accident while trying to escape her violent ex-husband. The police report mentioned that Carol had left a small child with neighbors before leaving. The description matched Emily perfectly, but there were still pieces missing from the puzzle. How had Helen met Carol? Why was she sending money? And why did an orphaned child bear such a striking resemblance to his late wife? It was then that Richard decided to seek out the only person who might know the truth, Rebecca, Helen's sister. The two had had a terrible fight a few years before Helen's departure, and never spoke again. Rebecca lived in an elegant apartment in Brooklyn Heights, and was not at all happy to see her brother-in-law at her door. "What do you want, Richard?" she asked, without even inviting him in. "I need to know about Carol Thomas. I know you know who she is." The woman paled. "I don't know what you're talking about. Rebecca, I found a child who might be connected to Helen. Please, help me understand." After 20 minutes of insisting, Rebecca finally gave in and told a story that left Richard completely shaken. Carol Thomas was a distant cousin of Helen, a humble woman living in a difficult situation in the city centre. 5 years before Helen's departure, Carol had lost her baby shortly after birth due to childbirth complications. Helen became obsessed with helping her, explained Rebecca. She found out through her medical contacts where Carol was hospitalized and went to visit her. She came home saying she had found a kindred spirit in pain. "But why did she never tell me?" "Because you would have thought it was crazy, Richard." Helen began living in a fantasy where she could give Carol what she herself couldn't have, a child. She convinced Carol to move to that house in Chinatown, paid all the expenses and visited constantly. "But what does this have to do with Emily?" Rebecca hesitated. "That's where the story gets confusing. Helen never told me details, but in the last months before her departure, she started talking about a surprise she was preparing for you. She said you were going to be a complete family." "What kind of surprise?" "I don't know, Richard. And honestly, I don't want to know." Helen was very emotionally unwell lately. The obsession with motherhood had completely consumed her. Richard left his sister-in-law's apartment with more questions than answers. He drove through the streets of New York, trying to organize his thoughts when the phone rang. It was Sister Margaret. "Mr. Richard, you need to come here urgently. Emily fell ill during snack time. She accidentally ate something with peanuts and is having an allergic reaction." The businessman made the quickest U-turn of his life and rushed to the orphanage. He found Emily in the infirmary, her face swollen and having difficulty breathing. The sister had already administered the emergency medication, and the girl was improving. She has always had this allergy, explained the nun. Very severe. We have to be constantly careful with everything she eats. Richard watched the girl recover and remembered something he had completely forgotten. His son Benjamin, who had died at 2 years old from pneumonia, also had a severe peanut allergy. The doctor at the time said it was something genetic and rare. That night, Richard called Dr. Thompson, the family doctor who had followed Helen during her failed pregnancy. Doctor, I need to ask you a question about genetics. Is it possible for 2 unrelated children to have the same rare peanut allergy? It's very unlikely, Richard, especially the severe type your son had. This condition has a very strong hereditary component. And if it were, hypothetically, the same family, then yes, it would be expected. But why are you asking this? Richard hung up the phone with trembling hands. All the coincidences were aligning in a way that was impossible to ignore. The next morning, he returned to the orphanage determined to discover the truth. He found Emily drawing alone in a corner of the courtyard. "What are you drawing, little one?" "My home," she replied, without looking up from the paper. "The house where I was born." Richard looked at the drawing. It was a large mansion with gardens and a fountain in front, very similar to his own house. "Emily, have you ever been in a house like this?" "Only in my dreams, but I remember. There was a room full of toys and a boy who sometimes played with me." Richard's heart almost stopped. "What was that boy like?" "He looked like me. Aunt Carol said we looked like brother and sister." Tears began to stream down the businessman's face. He hugged Emily tightly, finally understanding the impossible truth that was right in front of him. "Emily," he said, his voice choked, "how would you like to have a daddy?" "I would like that very much. Can you be my daddy?" "I think I already am, my daughter. I think I already am." In the days that followed, Richard moved heaven and earth to uncover the whole truth. He hired the best detectives, consulted doctors and lawyers, until he finally managed to piece together the complete story. Helen had discovered, through her network of medical contacts, a peculiar situation at Mercy General Hospital 5 years before her departure. On the same night that Carol Thomas lost her baby, another woman had given birth to premature twins, but only one had survived the first few hours. The biological mother was a 17-year-old teenager, the daughter of a wealthy family who wanted to avoid scandal. The surviving baby was discreetly put up for adoption, while the other was reported as lost. Helen, in her desperation to be a mother and moved by genuine compassion for Carol, had devised a complex plan. Using her contacts and influence, she managed to have the lost baby given to Carol, who would raise the child as if she were her own daughter, with Helen funding everything. The surviving baby had been adopted by a family of New York business owners, a family that could not have children naturally. Richard and Emily were biological father and daughter. Benjamin, the son he thought he had lost at 2 years old, was alive. What he thought had been pneumonia was actually a scheme orchestrated by Helen to justify the child's disappearance, whom she had secretly placed in Carol's care. The discovery changed everything in Richard's life. He immediately began the legal process to gain custody of Emily, facing months of bureaucracy and social investigations. During this period, he visited the girl daily at the orphanage. Emily had become attached to him naturally and instinctively, as if she knew on some deep level that they were family. "Daddy," she said one day while they were playing in the orphanage garden, "why doesn't Mommy Helen come to visit me anymore?" Richard had told her about Helen delicately, explaining that she was a very good woman who had helped many people, including her. "She had to leave, my daughter, but she made sure you were well taken care of until I found you." "Did she know you were my father?" "Yes, she knew, and she really wanted us to find each other." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. The adjustment process wasn't easy. Emily had spent the last 3 years in an environment completely different from what would be her new life. The mansion in the Upper East Side was a new world for her. Mrs. Wilson proved to be a crucial ally in the transition. The housekeeper, who had kept Helen's secret all these years, now devoted herself entirely to helping Emily adjust. She has the same mannerisms as Mrs. Helen when she was nervous, Mrs. Wilson commented one day, watching Emily fiddle with her hair while trying to solve a puzzle. "Do you think she'll get used to it here?" asked Richard, worried. "Mr. Richard, this girl was born for this house. See how she knows every corner, even though it's officially her first time here." It was true, Emily seemed to have an instinctive memory of the house. She knew where the kitchen was, found the bathroom without help, and once surprised everyone by mentioning that there were toys stored in the attic. When Richard went up to check, he actually found a box with old toys that had belonged to Benjamin. Toys that Emily shouldn't have known about, but which she described perfectly. The most emotional revelation came 3 months after Emily permanently moved into the house. She was playing in the garden when she suddenly stopped and ran inside the house. "Daddy! Daddy!" she shouted, looking for Richard. "What is it, my daughter?" I remembered when I was little and used to play here." Emily took him to the office and pointed to a small mark on the wall, almost unnoticeable. "I made this little mark when I was small, with Daddy's pencil." Richard examined the mark. It was indeed a child's scribble, exactly at the height Benjamin would have been when he was 2 years old. "How do you know it was you who made it?" "Because I remember the smell. And I remember the song Mommy Helen used to sing." She began humming the same melody she had sung at the orphanage, but now with more detail, as if the memories were slowly coming back. "Sleep, my angel, for Mommy is here. Sleep peacefully and I will protect you. Daddy is here too, watching over you. We are a family that will never be lost." Richard had never heard the full version of the song. Helen must have made it up especially for Emily. Over the months, more memories returned. Emily remembered Benjamin, the brother she never knew she had. She remembered the first 2 years of life in the mansion, before Helen took her to live with Carol. "Why did Mommy Helen take me away?" she asked one day. It was a question Richard had also asked himself. After much investigation and talking with psychologists, the only plausible explanation was that Helen, in her fragile emotional state, had believed she was protecting Emily in some way. Perhaps from Richard himself, who at the time was completely focused on work after the loss of the pregnancy. "I think she wanted to make sure you would grow up surrounded by lots of love," he replied. "And she succeeded. Carol loved you like a daughter, and I love you as your father." Life gradually settled into a new routine. Richard drastically cut back his work hours to dedicate himself to Emily. He hired a child psychologist to help with the adjustment process and started therapy himself, to deal with all the revelations about Helen. 1 year after Emily's arrival, Richard decided it was time to visit Helen's grave with his daughter. It was a conversation he had been putting off, but knew was necessary. At Greenwood Cemetery, Emily held her father's hand as they walked among the headstones until they reached the Anderson family mausoleum. "Here is Mommy Helen," said Richard, kneeling beside his daughter. Emily stayed silent for a few minutes, looking at Helen's photo on the marble. "She looks sad in the picture," she finally commented. "Why do you think that?" "Because her eyes are like yours when you get sad thinking about her." The child's observation touched Richard deeply. It was true that he still carried hurt from the choices Helen had made, even understanding she was ill. "You're right, my daughter. But do you know why she was sad?" "Why?" "Because she knew she wouldn't be able to take care of you for long, and that worried her a lot. But now she must be happy, because she knows we found each other." Emily took out a drawing from her little bag that she had made at school. It was a family portrait, her, Richard, Helen, and even Carol, all together in a colourful house. "Can I leave this for her?" "Of course you can." While Emily placed the drawing in the flower vase, Richard took the opportunity to make a silent promise. He promised Helen he would be the best father possible for Emily, and that he would honour the memory of all the people who had loved his daughter. On the way back home, Emily was more talkative than usual. "Daddy, now that I live with you, can I call you Daddy in front of the other kids?" "Of course, my daughter. Why?" "Because at the orphanage I could never say I had a father. Now I can say I have the best daddy in the world." Richard felt his eyes fill with tears. He stopped the car and hugged Emily tightly. "And I can say I have the best daughter in the world." 2 years had passed since Emily came into Richard Anderson's life. The girl, now 8 years old, was perfectly adapted to her new life. She attended a private school near home, took ballet on Saturdays, and had become the center of Richard's universe. The house, once silent and melancholic, was now filled with laughter, drawings on the walls, and music. Emily had brought a light that Richard didn't even know was missing. Mrs. Wilson, who had initially been worried about the change in routine, now couldn't imagine the house without the girl's presence. "Mr. Anderson," she said one morning while preparing breakfast, "do you remember how quiet this house used to be?" "I do. Why?" "Now I understand why Mrs. Helen did what she did. She knew this house needed a child to feel complete." It was a reflection Richard often had. All of Helen's choices, however painful and confusing they had been, had led to this moment. Emily was where she should be, with whom she should be. At school, Emily stood out not only for her grades, but for her emotional maturity. The teachers commented that she had a special sensitivity for dealing with other children going through difficulties. "She always seeks out the shyest or saddest children," the teacher reported during a parent-teacher meeting. "It's as if she knows exactly how they feel." Richard understood. Emily had experienced abandonment and losses that most children would never face. This experience had made her empathetic in a natural way. At home, she maintained some rituals that had become special for both of them. Every night before bed, they would look at Helen's portrait in the study, and Emily would tell her about her day. "Mommy Helen," she said one of those nights, "today I helped a new girl at school. She was crying because she missed her mother. I told her that mothers never really go away, that they always watch over us in a different way." Richard was moved by his daughter's wisdom. "What else did you tell her?" "That when we love someone very much, that person always finds a way to come back to us, just like you found a way to come back to me." Emily's reflections always surprised Richard. Despite her young age, she had developed a deep understanding of love, loss, and family that many adults didn't have. The relationship between them had developed naturally and specially. Richard discovered that being a father was very different from what he had imagined. It wasn't just about providing and protecting, but also constantly learning from the unique perspective that Emily brought to the world. "Daddy," she said one day while they were doing homework together, "why do you work so much?" "To give you a good life, my daughter. But I already have a good life. I have you." Comments like this made Richard rethink many of his priorities. He further reduced his time at the office and started working more from home to always be present in Emily's life. Gradually, he came to understand that Helen, even in her complicated emotional state, had made some right decisions. By choosing Carol to care for Emily, she had ensured that the girl grew up surrounded by genuine love, even if in simple conditions. "Was Carol really a mother to you?" he asked one day. "Yes, she was. She did everything to make me happy. She sang, told stories, made delicious food, and she always said that one day I would find my real father." "Did she know who I was?" "I think she did. She always said my father was a very good man who worked helping other people, and sometimes she would cry while looking at a photo of you that Mommy Helen had given her." These revelations helped Richard better understand the whole context. Helen had created a network of care around Emily, ensuring the girl always knew she was loved and had a father somewhere. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. 3 years after Emily's arrival, Richard received a call that would once again change his perspective on the past. It was from Dr. Thompson, the family doctor. "Richard, I need to tell you something important. Today I was visited by a woman who's looking for information about a baby given up for adoption 10 years ago." Richard's heart raced. "What does this have to do with me?" "She specifically mentioned Mercy General Hospital and a situation involving twins. I think it might be related to Emily." The woman was named Melissa Brown and had been the teenager who gave birth to the twins a decade earlier. Now 28, married and financially stable, she'd been searching for the children she'd been forced to give up by her family. Richard agreed to meet her, but on the condition that Emily wouldn't know about the meeting until he better understood the situation. Melissa was a simple woman with a delicate appearance who worked as a nurse at a public hospital. When Richard saw her, he immediately recognized some features Emily had inherited, the shape of her eyes and her smile. "Mr. Anderson," she said, visibly nervous, "I know this situation is complicated. I'm not here to take your daughter away from you. I just want to know if she's okay. How did you find out where she was? I spent years investigating. I found out about Mrs. Helen and about Carol Thomas. When I learned Carol had passed away, I was desperate. It was only recently that I managed to track down that Emily was with you." Richard was moved by the care and respect Melissa showed for the situation. "Would you like to meet her?" "I'd like that very much, but only if it's good for her. I understand that you're her father now." In the following days, Richard spoke with Emily's psychologist about how to handle the situation. The professional suggested a gradual process, first explaining to Emily about her biological mother, and then, if she wanted, arranging a meeting. "Emily," Richard said one afternoon while they played in the garden, "you know you have a mother who brought you into the world, different from Mommy Helen who raised you." "Yes, I know. Carol used to talk about her sometimes. She said she was very young and had to give me to others to care for. That mother is looking for you. She'd like to meet you." Emily thought for a few minutes. "Is she a good person?" "She seems to be, yes. She works caring for other people at the hospital." "Then I'd like to meet her. But you'll still be my dad, right?" "Always, my daughter. Always." The first meeting took place in a public park, in a neutral setting. Melissa brought an album with photos from when she was pregnant and some letters she'd written to her children over the years, but could never send. "Hi, Emily," said Melissa, kneeling to be at the girl's eye level. "I'm Melissa. It's such a pleasure to meet you. Are you really my actual mother? I'm the one who brought you into the world, yes, but your real father is him," she said, pointing to Richard. "I just wanted to make sure you were happy and safe." Emily studied Melissa with curiosity. "Why didn't you stay with me when I was a baby?" "Because I was very young and couldn't take proper care of you, but I thought about you and your brother every single day." "I have a brother?" Richard gently intervened. "You had a twin brother, my daughter, but he went to another family when you were born." "Can I meet him too?" Melissa and Richard exchanged glances. It was a possibility both had considered, but it brought additional complications. "Maybe one day," replied Melissa, "if you want to and if it's good for everyone." The meeting lasted 2 hours and went better than Richard expected. Emily was naturally affectionate with Melissa, but made it clear that Richard was her primary family. In the following months, Melissa began visiting Emily once a week. She never tried to interfere with the girl's upbringing or decisions, but developed a warm and respectful relationship with both. "Mr. Anderson," she said one day, "thank you for letting me be part of Emily's life. I know you weren't obligated to. Emily has the right to know her full story, and you seem like a good person. May I ask you a favor?" "Of course." "If one day you want to meet her brother, I have information about where he is." The revelation that it was possible to find Emily's twin brother opened a new dimension in the story. Richard knew he would eventually have to deal with this issue, but for now, he wanted Emily to fully adapt to the current situation. Emily, in turn, showed a natural curiosity about her brother, but without urgency. She was happy and secure in her present life. "Daddy," she said one evening, "if I meet my brother, will you still love me the same?" "My daughter, love doesn't shrink when it's shared, it only grows. If we meet your brother one day, it will only make our family bigger and happier." The answer seemed to reassure Emily, who went back to focusing on her drawings. Over time, Richard realized that Helen, despite all her complicated decisions, had left a legacy of love. Emily had grown up surrounded by people who genuinely loved her: Carol, who raised her with dedication; Helen, who protected her in her own way; and now he and Melissa, who formed an unconventional but loving family. The house in the Upper East Side had completely transformed. The walls now displayed not only Helen's portrait, but also Emily's drawings, photos of the new family, and even a small picture of Carol in a special frame. "Mrs. Wilson," Richard said one day, "do you think Helen would be happy seeing how the house is now?" "Mr. Anderson, Mrs. Helen always wanted this house to be full of love and laughter. Now it's exactly that." It was true. The mansion that once seemed like a silent mausoleum now vibrated with positive energy. Emily had brought life to every corner. At school, Emily continued to excel, not only academically, but also in her ability to help other classmates. The teachers remarked that she had a natural talent for calming children who were going through difficulties. "She has impressive emotional wisdom for her age," commented the school psychologist. "It's as if she instinctively understands what loss and recovery mean." At home, Emily had deep conversations with Richard that always surprised him. "Daddy," she said one day, while they were doing homework together, "I think Mom Helen knew you were going to find me." "Why do you think that?" "Because she always told Carol that one day my real father would show up, and she was right." "Do you feel angry at Helen for taking you away when you were little?" Emily thought seriously before answering. "No. I think she did what she thought was best at the time. And if she hadn't done that, maybe I would never have met Aunt Carol. And Aunt Carol taught me many important things." The maturity of the response moved Richard. Emily had developed a rare ability to understand complex situations without holding grudges. 4 years after Emily's arrival, Richard made an important decision. He wanted to get married again. He had met Jennifer, a 40-year-old pediatrician who worked at the same hospital where Melissa served as a nurse. Jennifer was a caring, intelligent woman who had immediately taken a liking to Emily. More importantly, Emily had developed a natural affinity with Jennifer. "Daddy," Emily said one day after one of Jennifer's visits, "you really like Jennifer, don't you?" "Yes, I do. And you?" "I like her too. She's nice and smells good, and she knows how to make that chocolate cake I love." "How would you feel if Jennifer came to live with us?" Emily smiled. "That would be cool. Then I'd have a mom who lives here and Melissa who comes to visit. It would be like having 2 mothers." The simplicity with which Emily viewed the situation made the whole process easier. Jennifer moved into the house gradually, first spending weekends, then a few days during the week until finally moving in permanently. The wedding was a small, intimate ceremony in the chapel of the school where Emily studied. Melissa was invited and agreed to participate, demonstrating once again her maturity in handling the complex situation. "Mr. Anderson," Melissa said on the wedding day, "thank you for building such a beautiful family for our Emily." "Our Emily is right," he replied. "She really has 2 mothers now, and that's wonderful." Life settled into a new happy routine. Jennifer brought a different energy to the house, perfectly complementing Richard's fatherly love. She helped Emily with feminine issues that Richard wouldn't have known how to approach alone, and became a special confidant for the girl. Mrs. Wilson, who had initially been apprehensive about another change, quickly grew fond of Jennifer. "This house has never had so many happy women at the same time," she commented one day, watching Jennifer and Emily cooking together. "And do you think that's good?" asked Richard. "Mr. Anderson, this house feels complete for the first time since I've worked here." 2 years after the wedding, Jennifer suggested something she had been thinking about for a while. "Richard, what if we tried to find Emily's brother? Do you think it's time? I think Emily is mature enough to handle it, and she has the right to know her brother if she wants." They talked with Emily, now 12 years old, about the possibility. "I do want to meet him," she said without hesitation, "but I'm afraid he might not like me." "Why wouldn't he?" asked Jennifer. "Because he's had a family since he was little, and I didn't. Maybe he doesn't want to know about a sister he doesn't even remember exists." Richard understood his daughter's fear. It was a delicate situation that needed to be handled very carefully. With Melissa's help, they managed to locate the family that had adopted Emily's twin. The child, now named Nathan, lived with a middle-class family in Boston. The adoptive parents, Michael and Sarah Johnson, were contacted and appeared open to the meeting. "Nathan has always known he was adopted," Sarah explained in a phone conversation, "and recently he started asking questions about his biological family." The first meeting was set in a park in Boston, neutral ground for both families. Richard, Jennifer, and Emily made the trip together, all nervous but hopeful. Nathan was visibly similar to Emily, but with a completely different personality. While she was outgoing and talkative, he was shy and observant. Even so, the connection between them was immediate. "Are you really my sister?" were Nathan's first words to Emily. "Yes, I am. And you're really my brother." "Why were we separated?" Emily, with her characteristic wisdom, replied, "Because life sometimes does strange things. But what matters is that we found each other now." The meeting lasted the entire day. Both families had lunch together, the children played in the park, and everyone could talk about how to integrate this new family dynamic. Michael and Sarah proved to be wonderful people who had raised Nathan with much love and care. They didn't see the reunion as a threat, but as an opportunity for Nathan to learn about his roots. "We always knew this day might come," said Michael, "and we're happy that Nathan has the chance to meet his biological family." In the following months, the two families established a routine of monthly meetings. Nathan and Emily developed a special friendship, which gradually turned into a true sibling relationship. "Daddy," said Emily one day after one of their meetings with Nathan, "now I understand why Mom Helen did all that." "Why, my daughter?" "Because if we had grown up together since we were little, maybe we wouldn't have learned to value family like we did. We had to lose to understand what's important." Once again, the depth of Emily's reflection impressed Richard. She had developed a life philosophy based on gratitude and acceptance. Jennifer also became fond of Nathan and naturally began including him in family activities. The boy, initially shy, gradually opened up and formed bonds with everyone. "Aunt Jennifer," he said one day, "thank you for taking care of my sister when I couldn't." The simplicity and sincerity of the gratitude deeply moved Jennifer. 5 years after the first meeting with Nathan, the two families had become a very close, extended family. The siblings talked daily by phone and met at least twice a month. Nathan had moved to New York to attend high school at a private school near Emily's house, staying with Richard and Jennifer during the week and returning to Boston on weekends. "It's as if he had always lived here," commented Mrs. Wilson, who had grown very fond of the boy. Emily, now 17, had become an extraordinary young woman. Besides being an excellent student, she actively participated in volunteer work with underprivileged children, inspired by her own story. "Daddy," she said one day, "I want to study psychology to work with children who have been through situations like mine." "Are you sure?" "I am. I want to help other children understand that family isn't just who brought you into the world, but who chooses to love and care for you." Emily's career choice was another demonstration of how she had transformed her difficult experiences into wisdom and purpose. Nathan, in turn, had become interested in medicine, inspired by Jennifer's work. He wanted to be a pediatrician to care for sick children. "I think we inherited this from you," he said to Richard and Jennifer, "the desire to help others." The family had found a perfect balance. Richard had discovered that being a father was much more than just providing and protecting. It was being present, listening, supporting, and allowing the children to become who they were meant to be. Jennifer had discovered that she could love children who weren't born to her as if they were her own. Love didn't depend on genetics, but on choice and dedication. Melissa continued to be part of Emily's life, but now as a dear family friend, without pressures or conflicts. She had married and had other children, but maintained a special affection for the daughter she had needed to give up. "Mr. Richard," she said at a family lunch, "thank you for allowing me to be part of Emily's story. I know you weren't obligated to." "Melissa, you are part of our family. You always will be." Michael and Sarah had also become close friends. The two families spent holidays together and had created their own traditions. On Emily's 18th birthday, Richard organized a special party. All the people who had been part of the journey were present: Melissa, Michael, Sarah, Nathan, Jennifer, Mrs. Wilson, Sister Margaret from the orphanage, and even Rebecca, Helen's sister, who had reconciled with the family. "Emily," said Richard during the speech, 18 years ago, a little girl pointed to my wife's portrait and asked why her mother's picture was on my wall. That question changed our lives forever." Everyone applauded emotionally. "Today, he continued. "I want to thank Helen for arranging this meeting, even in a way I didn't understand at the time. I want to thank Carol for loving you when I couldn't be there. I want to thank Melissa for bringing you into the world and for trusting our family. And I want to thank you, my daughter, for turning a silent house into a home full of love." Emily stood up and hugged her father. "Daddy," she said with tears in her eyes, "thank you for never giving up on finding me, even when you didn't know you were looking." The party lasted late into the night, with everyone sharing stories and memories of the journey that had brought them to that moment. Later, when everyone had left, Richard, Jennifer, Emily, and Nathan gathered in the living room to talk. "Do you know what the most amazing part of this whole story is?" asked Emily. "What?" asked the other three. "It's that in the end, everyone ended up exactly where they were supposed to be. I learned about true love from Carol, I learned about family from you, and I learned about forgiveness and understanding from this whole situation. Nathan learned about dedication and care from Michael and Sarah. Jennifer found a family to call her own, and you, Dad, learned that being a father is much more than just fathering a child." "And what do you think Helen learned?" asked Nathan. Emily thought for a moment. "I think Helen learned that true love sometimes requires us to make difficult choices for the good of the people we love. Even if it seems wrong at the time, sometimes it's the only way to ensure everyone ends up where they need to be." End of story. Now tell me what you thought of this touching story. Write in the comments which part moved you the most, and if you believe love can truly overcome any obstacle. Do you know a similar story in your own family? Share it with us. Leave your like if this story touched you, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other amazing stories like this one. Your company is very important to us.